when you talk about the firm that produced the Steele reporting, the name of the firm that produced that was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not familiar with that. And
let me just help you. It was. It's not a trick question. Right? It was Fusion GPS.
A stunning moment today. The former special counsel claimed he wasn't familiar with the firm behind the Steele dossier, Fusion GPS, which leads to more questions about what exactly in his own report Mueller was familiar with. Joining us tonight, Victoria Toensing, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the Justice Department, Joe diGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, founding partners of the diGenova and Toensing law firm, and it is great to have you both here. A moment that we have all, like much of the country, been waiting for. This turned out to be something that I personally, as I've said here tonight, I knew that he didn't author the report, but I did think at least he would have read it. Victoria, your thoughts?
It's a great line. Listen, Bob Mueller.
Thank you very much.
It was in Bob Mueller's purview. I love that word. I bet Google's full of people looking up purview.
Are you going to use bailiwick too?
That's even better. But it was in his realm to investigate the Trump Tower meeting, oh my God, where there was a Russian lawyer about to give information about dirt on Hillary, which she never gave, never gave. And yet it was not in his purview to know or investigate that Russian lawyer met with Fusion GPS, a word he's never heard of, Glenn Simpson the night before that meeting at Trump Tower and the night after the meeting at Trump Tower. Oh, my, not in his purview.
Not in his purview. And he led an investigation of a president whose purpose was specifically to overthrow this president's administration, to remove him from office. As you watched him stumble and stammer, the bewildered looks on his face, if you did not take into account the harm he had done the nation, the fact that he was a tool of the radical Dems, the Democratic Party of hate, for 2 years and continuing with their assault on this president, you could feel sympathy for him, but what evil he has done over the course of 2 years, Joe.
This was an ignominious finale, and I am happy for the country that they got to see someone totally incompetent, unaware, completely unable to respond to legitimate questions from both Republicans and Democrats. What this proved today was what we've said all along. This was the Weissman investigation. Andrew Weissman ran this from beginning, and when you see Bob Mueller in that pathetic display today, you know what happened. Weissman did it all. He made sure that Roger Stone was arrested in the middle of the night with SWAT teams. He made sure that Paul Manafort was put in solitary confinement in an outrageous display of prosecutorial vindictiveness. Bob Mueller slept through this event from beginning to end, and today his ignominious finale showed him asleep at the hearing.
It is also, I don't think we should leave out Nancy Pelosi. I don't think we should leave out Chuck Schumer. And the Democratic Party and the Democratic National Committee that worked together in obvious tandem to steal an election. And this special counsel knew full well that there had not been a conspiracy collusion with the Russians, and yet persisted in restraining themselves from revealing that information to the American people, which played a significant role in the results, I believe firmly, in 2018.
Yep.
Hey, Lou, you left out one group, the mainstream media. None of this could have been done without the cooperation of New York Times, the Washington Post, Democracy Dies in Darkness, and all of the mainstream media television networks that colluded with the Democrats to get this message across. I want to say one other thing about Mueller's testimony today. He was capable of lying. He was very capable of doing that. He forgot some things, but he lied. He lied about when he was asked, why didn't you subpoena the president to interview him? He said, time, we're balancing return and we don't want the investigation. He did not have the legal standard to subpoena the president. There has to be a criminal trial, and the evidence needed when there is this criminal trial, and it has to be material to the issues at the criminal trial. That's the D.C. Circuit Court standard for getting information from the White House.
I settled on the word vindicated when the Mueller report came out. It was clear vindication of the president. It was in two parts. In the second part, I to this day do not understand why William Barr, the Attorney General, permitted it out. Because it's an irrelevancy, and it's a nasty irrelevancy. Why would you think, Joe, that William Barr permitted that to come out?
Because he didn't have any choice. He had said during his testimony that he was going to do everything he could to release everything that the law permitted, and he was bound by that. And in the long run, it shows how corrupt the Mueller investigation was, because when you read Part 2 of that report, you see that it was made out of whole cloth. It's so incompetently written, so biased, so vindictive, that I'm glad it was published, because it shows that Bob Mueller didn't know anything about it, that he adopted it. He politically corruptly adopted it, and yet when push came to shove, he couldn't even defend it.
And it violates all the rules of the Justice Department and prosecutors across this country and state prosecutors' offices. You do not talk about a person that you did not indict and say what the accusations are.
It showed how sleazy Mueller and his team were.
I cannot have two lawyers of your talent and distinction here without asking you this. Exoneration. The idea that he would sit there today, not just simply within the report and his snitty letters to the Attorney General, and talk about turning the presumption of innocence aside and asserting, this idea that he did not exonerate the president. Who asked him to, and why in the world did this become such a loaded and explosive term when it's irrelevant to all that is in our law? Because
this entire process turned the law on its head just to get one man and overturn an election. They were willing to throw away due process, the presumption of innocence, and create a new standard under the Constitution. He couldn't exonerate him. This was the culmination of the full plot to ruin this presidency, and it showed how vindictive they all were and abusive.
And they had to admit, Lou, that there was nothing to show collusion or conspiracy with the Russians, between the Trump campaign and the Russians. But it was not for lack of trying, because they put Paul Manafort into solitary confinement and brought him out 9 times, and said, are you ready to tell us that the president knew about the Trump Tower meeting prior to the meeting? Which wouldn't have been a crime in any event, but they were going to make it one. But, I mean, they tried to get people to give false information about the president so that they could bring the collusion charge.
Well, let me conclude as we have the last 2 or 3 of our discussions. We are approaching August and still no Inspector General report. I'm beginning to believe in almost nothing that emanates from the Inspector General's office. This is pathetic. The time that it's taken. It is not the most complex case I can imagine in the world. What in the world is the problem with the Inspector General and getting that report out?
Forget the IG.
Here's what's happening.
Don't tell me to forget the IG. We've been talking about the IG for a year.
He's not worth squat. Joe's going to tell you.
But here's what's happening. As a result of the appointment of Durham, people are flocking back to Horowitz to, quote, correct their testimony, to let him know that they've remembered new things, that they found out stuff that they didn't know about. People are worried, and they should be, because it's now beginning to become very clear that Durham is moving forward with speed, and people are going to Horowitz and asking to be re-interviewed. This includes FBI officials and others. And as a result of that, I'm delighted he's delaying.
And you're going to see that Mifsud was a Western agent, not a Russian agent.
And it's going to make Mueller look even worse when Dr. Mifsud gets to have his say. And he's already been interviewed by both Horowitz and Durham.
Trust us, Lou.
Oh, I trust you. I trust you implicitly and explicitly. I have to tell you, I am very tired of a Department of Justice that doesn't move with alacrity in the interest of justice.
That's
fair
perfectly
statement?
okay.
All right. Well, do you think that justice can hold up to my criticism?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.